At 26, I took over division ownership. I was straight up told, you just inherited the worst division on the entire ship. And guess what? Multiple leaders told me the same thing. So I had two options. I could manage the division and watch it decline, or turn it into the division that nobody would recognize in a year. This video is all about the playbook that I used and why leading young and being successful has nothing to do with age. By the time I was 27, I was leading a department of almost 50 or 60 employees. And now, at 38 years old, I run an organization that spans more than 100,000 square miles across 4 different states. And I do all this at the executive level. I'm going to break down some of the things I did as a young leader to include how I turned around a toxic culture inside my division, how I learned to lead up, down, and across to peers who were 10 years my senior, and the sacrifice that I made in my 20s to make my 30s and ultimately my 40s easy. When I checked into my organization, one of my bosses stopped me when I was checking in and they told me, guess what? You just inherited my worst division on the entire boat. And like I said, other leaders, they echoed that sentiment. Here's what I did next, and this really matters. I didn't panic, I didn't posture, and I didn't try to prove myself on day one. I did an assessment and I made a decision. Culture doesn't change with speeches. It changes with consistent action over time. And the time that it takes to make that difference surprised me as a young leader. Here's the reality. It takes a year of hard work to really make an impact with culture. Are you ready to put in that amount of work? That's a year of sticking to the plan, trusting in yourself when there's not a lot of metrics that you can measure to see those results, and slowly turn the tide. If you quit early, all that hard work is for nothing. If you keep grinding it out though, I promise, after a year, your team will be in a much better place and your job as a leader will be way easier. So remember, not a week, not a month, a year. So if you're 22 and you want those results fast, listen to this. You can change performance fast, but changing culture, that is slow and it takes hard work and time. Here's the uncomfortable truth about culture change. Turning around that struggling division taught me these things. Your people are watching all the time to see if you are doing what you say you're going to do. If you mean what you say you mean. If you're trying to enforce standards and you don't have consistency in application, you're just making tiny waves and setting vibes, not making changes on that culture needle. And trust is built in small moments over months and months of work. That first year is gonna be brutal because you're doing 2 different jobs. You're fixing those problems and you're proving that you're not gonna abandon your team when things get hard. If you wanna stand out young, you have to have the patience to stick around and stay in the game long enough for people to believe in you and trust you as a leader. Now let's talk about something that's super hard at any age, but even harder when you're a young leader. And that's leading across to your peers and leading up to your boss. One of those hardest parts of my job wasn't leading my sailors. It was leading across and leading up with people who were 8 to 10 years my senior inside the organization. And so I had to prove myself to them that I belonged in the room, and it took more work because I was young. That's a real mental game, especially when you think you have like imposter syndrome, when it feels like you don't belong. If you're struggling with that imposter syndrome, I want you to check out my other video. I did an entire video on how to defeat imposter syndrome. It affects everyone, and if you need it, check it out. Here's what I learned from that situation though. You don't win by trying to act older. You win by being credible, committed, and mission focused. Prove your leadership by doing the one thing: lead, and lead well. This means that you need to know your job cold. You need to be dependable. You need to speak with clarity. You can't get emotional when they test you. And you have to make your decisions make sense. That respect isn't given because you've been around the block. That respect is earned because you produce results and you take care of the people. Let's talk about that taking care of the people. I'm a people first leader, and I had a strong leader early in my career as a middle manager who taught me and cemented that people first leadership is the way to go. When I was a young divisional chief, I had a command master chief who taught me all about people. He didn't see me just as another young chief who was gung-ho. He really taught me that people are our number one resource. I knew that all along, but he showed me exactly what that looks like and what leading as a people-first leader really meant. Our people, we have to invest in them. We have to spend time getting to know them. What are their goals? What are their aspirations? What are their fears? What are their struggles? And then as a leader, how can I leverage my position to make them better and help them get to where they want to go? It's not all about those outcomes and what can they do for me. It's, hey, I'm going to take care of you if you take care of the mission. And I'm a firm believer, if you take care of the people, the mission will follow. But if you mess up taking care of those people, we won't even have time to get to the mission. Everything you do as a leader is a signal of whether you value that person as a person or a number. Your body language, the way you speak, the way you respond to bad news, all those things, you have to learn to dial them in with a purpose. When you take care of the people, everything else follows. This isn't in a motivational way, not some poster, but in a real results way. Your readiness is going to improve, standards are going to rise, accountability is going to land better, and trust becomes real. And as a leader, trust is the currency of everything you do. If your bank account on trust is empty, you can't write any checks. Next, I want to talk about compounding hours and how you'll win by sacrificing time. This is what's going to make the biggest difference between success, mediocrity, and failure. As a young leader, plain and simple, I outworked everyone. This wasn't just extra time for a week. It was for an entire season of my life, my 20s. My workday started at 07, but I came in at 05. My workday ended at 1600, but guess what? I stayed till 1900. Those 5 extra hours a day gave me almost an entire extra workday every single week that others weren't putting in. Plain and simple, I could get more done because I was working more. Additionally, as a young leader, I spent more time out to sea or in an operational command than my average peers. It was a sacrifice for my family, but I wouldn't be sitting here today where I'm at without it. I did about 2 to 3 times more sea time than the average person. I'm not saying that has to be you, but you have to be willing to outwork everyone else if you want to be ahead of the power curve. Those extra hours compound significantly over time. More work, more reps, more learning, more training, more trust. All of that is derived from those extra hours that I put in. People call it luck now, but they don't see all those sacrificial hours that I put in my 20s to get to where I am now. And if you want to be somewhere faster than the average, you got to be willing to put in the work. Next, I want to talk to you about a common misconception that people have about young leaders. This is the misconception that I want to kill. Young people aren't ready to lead. For me, age has nothing to do with readiness. I've met plenty of people who have been in for 20 years who can't lead a lick. And I've met plenty of young leaders who can't lead well either. It ultimately comes down, if people are ready, then they're ready. Age is just a number. It means almost nothing to actual success at the leadership level. That readiness and the ability to lead comes down to their attitude, comes down to the maturity, comes down to competence, character, consistency, and like I said earlier, taking care of people while producing results. If somebody's qualified and their record supports it, they should be given the opportunity to step up. Age doesn't matter. If we're holding people back based off age, we're losing our best and brightest moving up and into the leadership position to make our organizations better. If you're in your 20s, I want you to listen closely. When we were growing up, you were told you can be anything in the world. But what our parents or the people that raised us didn't tell us is that unimaginable amount of work ethic that it requires to be successful. What I recommend is you use your sacrificial years, your 20s, as a launchpad for your 30s and 40s. If you mess around in your 20s and don't get serious, you're going to have to sacrifice your 30s to be where you could have already been. I'm not saying don't have fun, but you got to find the balance between having fun and being a professional. If you don't sacrifice your 20s, those 30s and those 40s are going to be hard. If you sacrifice early, that compounds, making your 30s and your 40s easier. 1000%, I would not be where I am today as early as I am if it wasn't for my hard work and the sacrifice that I put in and my family put in when we were young. That's the trade that I made. If this hit hard to you, I want you to leave a comment about what you learned and what change you're going to make to Launchpad your life, then smash that subscribe button because I'm dropping a leadership video nearly every single week. And we're here and we're going to grow together to make all of us the best leaders for our people. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.